It seems that every CEO is calling the hyperscalers into the room and saying, how do we take advantage of AI?
If you're not built with AI, someone will build to replace you.
Yeah. Welcome back to The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and my mission is to help leaders like you achieve your greatest results through successful partnering. You know, we've been chronicling this time of massive change and transformation, what we've been calling the tectonic shifts. We've been following along the massive role of the hyperscalers and the role of marketplaces. In fact, we've had each of the hyperscalers on recently, and now we turn our attention to the software fueling this cloud go-to-market transformation. Tackle.io created the category and recently partnered with us here in the studio for a live in-person event, Ultimate Partner Executive Summit. And I'm excited to be joined today in this studio with the CEO of Tackle.io, John. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Vince. Great to be here. Love the new space.
What do you think?
It's pretty awesome. That's great to be in real life.
In real life, in person, right?
I don't have a hoodie on. I'm dressed up today.
And you're not wearing the tackle shirt.
No tackle shirt, no hoodie.
Right? We're here in the studio live for our viewers, mostly on YouTube, and also for our listeners. So great to have you back on the podcast. You know, it's been just a year now. Episode 185. It's probably one of my favorite podcast episodes.
You're too kind.
No, we did it was a great deep dive on this whole marketplace moment, right? And I've been talking about these tectonic shifts we've been seeing. You've been chronicling cloud go-to-market. In fact, I think you pretty much invented that term, right? Or coined that term. We've been talking about the work that Tackle has been doing really at the forefront, right? Since 2016, basically creating a new category of software. And maybe we could start there a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a description for people that didn't watch episode 185, a little bit more about your vision for Tackle and your trajectory now.
Sure. Yeah. So, when we started Tackle, we were trying to help ISVs list and launch their businesses in the cloud marketplaces. And we thought that should be a business decision and not a product and engineering problem. And what's happened over the last 8 years is, people have started to make cloud a default substrate for the way that they sell. And this is not just for startups, it's for the largest software companies in the world. And that comes with a lot of complexity. It's not just about listing. Like, listing is the starting line. It's really about how do you integrate that into your core systems? How do you get sellers taking advantage of that? How do you get your sellers and cloud sellers working together? How do you use data to inform how to align your marketing and sales funnel to this new channel? So it's been really exciting to innovate around that on behalf of the ISV ecosystem and bring it to life, not only in Tackle, but inside of Salesforce, which is where a lot of our customers today, their sellers operate.
And, fast forward from 2016 to today, right? And we talked about this a little bit when you were on the podcast last year, but Canalys called $45 billion by the end of 2026, and then they pulled it back to 2025. And then you came out later that year, I think it was after you were on the podcast, and Tackle predicted that $100 billion in transactions would occur by 2026. Are we on track? Are we still moving in that same direction?
All the data is pointing to that same direction. The growth rates continue to accelerate. And what we're seeing, there were some really exciting launches in Q4 of last year where you saw companies like ServiceNow make a commitment to cloud go-to-market, and Workday make a commitment, and Salesforce make a commitment. And when these companies are engaging, they're not thinking about I need to do a deal or I need to enable this transactional vehicle. They're thinking strategically, and they come with really big dollars. And when you talk to buyers, I was on with a CIO today who was just talking about how they further are trying to understand how to take advantage of their cloud commitments. So these are strategic conversations. It's no longer happening at a departmental level. It's happening at the C-suite. It's really strategic. So I actually think we can see growth accelerate, not decelerate.
Yeah. And, for people who haven't been following along this conversation, right? And we've been tracking it, you've been tracking it, $1/3 trillion in durable cloud budgets amongst the three hyperscalers. That's astounding. And, we've been talking about the fact that, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this as well, is that the decision-making process is no longer happening in the line of business. It's really happening at the board level, right? The CEO, the CFO, and the board are making these commitments. These are tremendous commitments. I think Microsoft said that they saw an 80% increase of commitments over $100 million or more just last quarter. quarter to quarter growth. So I think that's exactly what you're saying here in terms of people now recognizing that this is now a new avenue, a new revenue, a stream of opportunity for them where they don't have to go after budgets.
And we see the CFO, when the CFO took ownership of the cloud budget, that was a big change that happened a couple of years ago as these commitments started to grow and as it became a top 5 budget level line item. And now that the CFOs are understanding this benefit of, I can correlate my cloud budget with my software budget, merge those two things together in order to get better economic leverage. I had a conversation with the CFO today, and we talked about days sales outstanding, like how collections change when you use Marketplace as a vehicle. And he was fascinated to hear like high quality cloud go-to-market customers see collections like DSO under 30 days, which
crazy
in this environment, especially as more people don't pay their bills on time because of macroeconomic conditions. I mean, that DSO benefit is a new emerging benefit we're seeing.
Yeah. It's incredible when you look at it. And it's also changing the dynamic between the ISV partners and their channels and the role of distribution in this whole process. We'll spend a little bit of time here, but I want to go back to this. Like we talked about, like we're seeing it accelerate. Like that, I believe is what you're saying, right? We're seeing an acceleration. What are you seeing from each of the three? And not to put you on the spot here, because I know we both work with all three and we both seen the trajectory. We all will say that AWS had an early start, right? They've been, front-footed on some of this, and the other two have kind of followed suit. What are you seeing from each three? And is it different, or is it just a different stage?
They're all at different stages, and I mean they're all trying to play to their strengths, which I think is the right thing. Like Microsoft, born a channel company, has for a long time thought about how channel fits in with this program and trying to get their field organization aligned and their buyers aligned, but there's a lot happening there. AWS has been the innovator. I mean, pioneered a lot of new concepts, created the idea of private offers, and we continue to see them like look for some new and innovative ways to spread the reach. I think a lot happening around how to make product-led purchasing even easier in the cloud. And
coming from retail as well, right? They come from that pedigree.
Yeah, the history there is different and unique. And Google, from an AI standpoint, had a huge, I was at Google Next and the focus around AI and Google's role in AI and just how they can complement those next-gen AI-driven companies and put cloud go-to-market central to that.
We were both together at Google Next, and there was high energy at that conference, I would say.
It was, compared to the days of the past where I think Google Next had more of a consumer feel, this year felt like the year of enterprise for Google Next. There was a different level of customer there than days in the past.
Yeah, agreed. And partner as well. And partners as well. We are thrilled to announce our partnership with InPartner Software, the world's leading provider of partner management technologies. Serving over 4 million partners globally, InPartner excels in delivering cutting-edge solutions for partner relationship management and partner marketing automation. Their robust platform offers essential tools like program compliance tracking, customizable partner journeys, and comprehensive business planning. These features empower partner teams to swiftly transition from program design to achieving maximum value. InPartner is dedicated to supporting partner ecosystems everywhere and continues to innovate with new modules like Analytics Studio, designed to help track and maximize the ROI of your partner program. For more information, visit inpartner.com. So what is holding us back, if anything?
Yeah, I think the macroeconomic environment is still uncertain, even though the Dow crossed the highest point in history in May. It's interest rate environment. Everybody thought interest rates would go down maybe by middle of the year. That doesn't seem to be happening. It's an election year. There's a lot of uncertainty around the election year. And I don't know if you follow Yamin Ball from Altimeter. He publishes this clouded judgment report, and he talked about how Workday saw a slowdown in sales cycles due to increased scrutiny. And there was all kinds of examples in this report just around increased scrutiny. And I think people are still behaving with caution, like just erring on the side of caution. And I think we'll see the rest of this year. And There's definitely strength in enterprise. I think, the big companies are like often happens in an economic downturn, the big companies take a chance to double down for the future. And I think that continues to happen. AI is no doubt fueling consumptions. I think the feedback around the clouds is they're returning to more statistically normal growth patterns. But as an ISV, everyone's trying to operate to these new benchmark rules. How do you operate? It's no longer growth at all costs. It's I have to operate to rule of 40. I have to get to efficiency as fast as possible. And that causes, companies to need to operate in different ways.
Well, you said it. We're still seeing these economic headwinds. Did we have a recession last year and maybe we didn't call it one?
I think the software economy had a recession, maybe the macroeconomic environment as the COVID spending patterns changed back towards more traditional spending patterns. Software was just on a tear all through 2021, 22. And I think that, no one maybe calls it a software recession, but there was a reckoning that happened in that landscape. And I think we're still living through that.
And I think you mentioned AI. We're certainly seeing, Canalys says there's a $158 billion opportunity in the short term for the ecosystem around AI. And I don't think that that's hype, really. I think that we're starting to see that. It seems that every CEO is calling the hyperscalers into the room and saying, how do we take advantage of AI?
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're not built with AI, someone will build to replace you. So it becomes a default component in every software product that's out there, which will drive more consumption. Ultimately it's data driven, and the data gravity that AI creates will increase consumption.
So you got to be here in the studio. We had our live event not too long ago, our executive summit. And you and I talked at that event about some of the trends that we're seeing and what we can expect in the next 12 months. So let's talk about that channel. You mentioned Microsoft being a leader, having this. In fact, it happened in Boca Raton. I always refer to Boca Raton because Bill Gates came down here 43 years ago, met with IBM, and licensed software. And that changed the dynamic in terms of how technology organizations went to market. And it created started and sparked this entire ecosystem that we see today. You think about the builders, you think about the ISVs, you start to think about the resellers like the CDWs, SHIs of the world. That evolved from that moment in time. But how is the marketplaces impacting the channel?
5 years ago, people thought marketplace would disrupt the channel, and I think that's proven not to be true. Yeah. It's maybe challenged the channel to think differently about their value equation, but we're seeing more acceleration with ISVs and channel in cloud go-to-market than ever before. And I think you're seeing more of the large sellers say, I want to pull the channel in more closely, especially as they try to figure out, I had a customer say, how can we get resources off our balance sheet to help us scale? And that's what the channel has an opportunity to do. So in this economic climate, I think channel rises in prominence from an ISV standpoint, which will help further accelerate how channel and cloud work together.
You've used the term meeting buyers where they buy, I believe was a term I've heard you say before. And that reminds me of that, right? Because the relationships are not necessarily with the ISV level. They might be down with a reseller or a systems integrator. Someone else owns or influences that decision process in the line of business. How do we streamline that? How do we make that more effective? Because I do feel like there's still some resistance and I won't say obstacles per se. It seems that some are doing better than others in this multi-party world.
Yeah, I think multi-party is still the early days, and I think it's how do you define multi-party? Like I think about multi-party relative to integrating ISV componentry together to build a solution. And is that a solution bundle that gets purchased through the cloud? Or is that something a channel partner puts together and uses cloud go-to-market as a transaction vehicle? And I think this is still a space where not all of the capabilities are available to make that happen in a really seamless way. But a couple of things are just guaranteed to be true. There will be more software in the future. Yeah, like I agree. The quantity of software will continue to grow at a massive rate. The number of titles people will use, builders will use more embedded components to build. So that's going to drive this need for multi-party solutions. And I think, every ISV also has an ecosystem that they're trying to figure out. Yes. how do I allow my user to get access to things that make my products better in combination? Like how do those multi-party transactions happen? Yeah. And we used to see people say, I want to go build a marketplace because I have these 10 partners I work with, and I just want to enable my buyer to buy from one of those partners seamlessly. But building a marketplace is hard. It's not easy. It requires a massive investment. It requires understanding the incentive of the buyer, the incentive of the platform, the incentive of the seller, being able to invest across that landscape. So I actually think like multi-party in some ways could disrupt this idea that ISVs need to build their own marketplace. Yeah, so
I agree with
super
that.
Early days here. I'm really curious to see it all play out.
Well, you talked about more software out there. I was thinking about the fact that you invested in a co-selling software platform just a little bit less than 2 years ago.
Yep.
I think that has an opportunity to germinate and evolve as well, because in order to stitch this all together, I don't feel like the tools all exist today.
Yeah. Yes. There are. The great news, the tools continue to get more integrated together as the workflows become closer. And I think marketplace and co-sell are a great example. They're really two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
They're two parts of the same workflows. So to separate them doesn't make sense from a usage at scale standpoint. So I think we continue to see and I think there's this whole next generation digital selling tech stack emerging at all the layers. When you think about, marketing and sales and partner and how all those systems operate together, marketplace and co-sell used to be a partner thing. Now they're a company thing. So that causes you to think about different personas and the way they're used. It's not just the alliance leader. It's the alliance leader in partnership with the RevOps leader, partnership with the sales leader, partnership with the marketing leader. So the complexity continues to grow.
I love what you're saying here, because we talk about complexity, and we talk about going across the seats at the table, and this effective co-selling that you just described it, I believe. But what aren't organizations getting right here in terms of effective co-selling? Because I do think that it's multi-organizational.
Yeah.
There's an influence strategy across your internal organization as well as your external partners. What aren't they getting right?
I mean, most people who struggle to co-sell haven't nailed the story. What's the better together story?
Yeah.
And then they haven't figured out how to bring that better together story to partners in a compelling way. And I think a lot of people go with quantity versus quality. I'm just going to register all my deals and we'll see what happens.
I've never seen that before.
When you think about it from the cloud provider perspective, they have thousands of ISVs doing that, and they just bury their people in unqualified things.
And you lose credibility right off the bat, right? You're done.
If you reverse that and say, I'm going to have my co-sell quality be pristine, so when a cloud seller gets a co-sell registration from my company, there's a brand that's like, that's a real deal. Yep. That's something I should engage with. And I think, again, more software, more co-selling, more noise. You have to tell a better story to rise above the noise.
So let's talk about the CRO. Maybe it's my myopic view based on where I came from and what I've seen so far, but I find that many of them still don't get it. Are you seeing a change here? Is what I think I heard you say recently.
Yeah, our CRO and I did a podcast with Revenue Builders, which is John McMahon, who's he's a old CRO at PTC, he sits on the board of Snowflake and Sumo Logic and all these amazing companies. And I think that's a signal, like the voice of the CRO is engaging to understand how to take advantage of cloud in this motion. And another phenomenon we see is CROs go from company A that had a successful cloud go-to-market motion to company B that doesn't. And they're immediately like, how come this isn't working?
Yeah.
It worked for me in the past. I need it to work today. And when cloud becomes 20% of revenue, which is kind of the common target in a lot of these focused ISVs today, it's a really material channel, probably the largest channel in the company. Global scale, global reach, global budget. So the CRO is like, that's a piece of my winning formula. I need it. So I think just as the dollars increase, it becomes more strategically relevant.
Yeah. What do you think the percentages are that get it versus those that are still laggard?
It changes by category. Like if you think about where cloud go-to-market really rose, it rose in the cloud forward technical categories. So DevOps, security,
backup and
storage,
recovery, all those,
storage, very classic cloud forward categories. At that stage, if you do not understand this, you're a laggard. Like, I think those companies are very mature in their understanding. And then they're just trying to decide how big a piece of this puzzle is it for me. Like, I think I describe it as the vintage ISVs. ISVs being born today build to be multi-cloud from how their platforms operate, as well as how they could be purchased.
Right, because they were born in the cloud.
They were born in the cloud. They were born in an era where cloud go-to-market, meeting their buyers where they want to buy, is table stakes. 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. No. Oftentimes you were born on one, maybe had a complementary product usage story on the other, but that's actually a harder system to run.
You could have been born on-prem, in fact, too. There were many that were born on-prem and then shifted to the cloud over that period of time.
So there's, I think the new vintage ISVs are engaging differently, and then that will drive everyone else to figure out, how do I integrate this into my system even more meaningfully.
So marketplaces and multi-party offers are taking off in a big way. They certainly have. Last year, 5 ISVs reached the $1 billion mark. It wasn't over 1 year. It was over a period of time. We're going to see more of that this year. Predictions on numbers?
I mean, I called in Cloud Go-to-Market XP, which is an event we do. It has a lot of ISVs just sharing success stories. I'm questioning, is this the year of the $1 billion ISV in 1 year?
Yeah.
Think that may still be aspirational, but if it's not this year, it'll be next year. Yeah. So, and as some of those big guys engage in different ways, I mean, they're bringing very large books of business to the table. So,
and they get it. They get it. They've learned how to harvest, I'll say, the opportunities working and co-selling with the hyperscalers. At least we've uncovered that in some of the conversations we've had with some of the hyperscalers. I'm so excited to continue our partnership with AG1. Many of you know I've made taking a green drink supplement part of my health ritual for over 21 years now, and it has made all the difference to my health and well-being. About 6 years ago, Athletic Greens, and now their product AG1, became my go-to supplement. AG1 is the first thing I take every morning to power my day. It covers all of my nutritional bases, supports my gut health, gives a boost to my immunity and energy levels. If you want to take ownership of your health, try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Vince M. That's drinkag1.com/Vince M. Check them out. So let's talk about that big event you held in May. You uncovered, I'll call it a secret sauce or a secret weapon, if you will. You described the organization as a data company, which I think was a little bit of a shift.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense, right? You have been at the leading edge of this, tip of the spear, and you've been accumulating all this data. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We built originally, I remember, HashiCorp was an early Tackle customer, and they were having some success with Cloud Go-to-Market. And we're like, hey, would you give us access to your pipeline in order to help you figure out the best deals to take on a Cloud Go-to-Market journey? And they're like, why would we ever do that? And I remember that moment being like, how do we get them to say yes? Like, because that seems like the compelling opportunity to unblock transactions.
That's right.
And we work to build towards that use case. How do you give sellers the data they need to be able to understand how to map an opportunity to a cloud, or even move Cloud Go-to-Market up the funnel? So we built a solution that was really designed around empowering a seller. Yeah. And that's driven by a combination of data we've seen through the clouds, as well as third-party data we've acquired in order to train a model that could make those predictions. But what's happened over time is our customers continue to use this data in new and powerful ways we didn't expect. And this is, this data is becoming the foundation of Tackle's AI strategy. And it's really the business use cases. And the first use case, to me, the one I'm fascinated with most lately, is planning. Like, how do you do territory planning? If you're going to hire a new rep, how do you give that rep a cloud dense territory? How do you make decisions about your ICP with cloud in mind relative to your business strategy? Marketing's another fascinating one. How do you align account-based marketing programs to the cloud? If there's a 6 cents buyer intent signal that's high, meaning a company's in market for your technology, could you marry that with a high propensity to buy in Microsoft or Google and say, hey, this is a hot lead for us. I'm going to promote this out of the marketing campaign and get it in the hands of a seller. Like that's a marketing program.
And maybe a commitment that's underspent right now, right?
Right.
They haven't met their commitments yet, and they're looking for opportunities to leverage that.
Yeah. Propensity to co-sell is another area. So we have like 12 different use cases around data that we continue to see. And the thing that I love, it's our customers who are pioneering these new ways of working and coming to us and saying, hey, we use the data in this new and interesting way. And then we can just continue to evolve how we productize that.
Let's talk a little bit more about, I want to dive a little bit more on the multi-party piece because, we had Jason Rook also present at the event. We talked about what Microsoft is doing. What do organizations like Microsoft need to do better, differently now to accelerate that multi-party success that maybe they're not doing it yet?
I think it comes back to that point around buyers. Like buyer behavior drives change.
Yep.
And when buyers are requesting to buy in this way, from all different parties involved, requesting to the channel, requesting to the ISVs, that starts to drive the behavior change. And I know all of the clouds are trying to figure out how to evolve the buyer landscape in this way. I mean, it's good for the cloud provider. It drives core service consumption. It drives stickiness by combining products together. But I do think like everything they can do to focus on evolving the buyer behavior will drive the sellers in the channel to continue to engage more.
And you mentioned incentives as well. I think, you have to think about the incentives along the chain, right?
Yes.
I look at this and effectively some of the hyperscalers don't necessarily incent the entire chain, the channel chain from ISVs all the way through to the customer. And then also those organizations, those channel organizations, there may not be the right level of incentives across to shift the behavior the right way from the seller side.
I think the channel partners, and we're seeing this in the data.
Yep.
There are channel partners leaning in who see the movement and they haven't fully figured it out. They don't fully understand incentives, but they're like, this is where the puck's going. I need to go skate there. They're the ones who are going to win at scale.
We know some of them actually listen to and watch this podcast.
Yeah.
So I know they pay attention because they want to learn how to take their organizations to that level.
Yeah. And we see that as another data use case where channel partners are coming to us and saying, how can we use cloud buyer intent data to inform how we focus our resources? What ISVs should we focus on?
That's right.
Who's not?
They can't cover thousands of them.
No, who has a low cloud propensity to buy, which means they might be a great migration opportunity. Like there's a lot of different ways. So the channel is an interesting data use case.
What about international? Multi-party is moving across, certainly we had Microsoft here in the studio with our event. They talked about how they finally moved out of just US. Some of it's just the commercial engines that support marketplace aren't as robust. What are you seeing on the international front? What's the weighting, so to speak, between US and the other markets?
I don't have a great data stat on the weighting between it, but we're definitely seeing acceleration in international as well as like capabilities to unlock international buying patterns, different language. So the internationalization of marketplace, I think, will drive more. I do think it comes back to the buyers. Buyer behavior internationally is typically a little behind the US. I mean, the US tends to innovate first and then the rest of the markets follow. But I think, this has been happening here for the last 3 years and the rest of the markets are definitely catching up.
So where's Tackle investing now? What's the next 12 months look like for you and the organization?
Yeah, I mean, really just investing in helping our customers be successful, investing heavily in this AI strategy and how we continue to leverage data to help people better align their marketing and sales funnel to clouds. Salesforce is a big investment area for us, just as our customers want to manifest this experience inside of Salesforce for multiple personas, Alliance persona, RevOps persona, sales rep persona. And then we
that integration is huge. It is huge.
Yeah.
Because it's the platform of choice for almost everyone.
Right. Channel's an investment area for us. And then even some of those concepts around ecosystem and how the ecosystem multi-party, how those start to play out. So a lot of investment areas. We are constantly experimenting and always looking for friction from our customers in order to attack and solve.
So for the thousands of folks that are either watching or listening to us today, and I can't believe it, we're in the second half of 2024.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was just wishing you Happy New Year just a few days ago. What do they need to do differently or need to think about to optimize their business success for the remainder of this year?
I think, the number one thing when we engage with a new ISV today, we start with a data-driven approach. 3 years ago, ISVs launched first and then figured out how to go find a deal after.
Yeah.
I think everyone who launched 3 years ago should go back to that ICP and say, how do I look at my company ICP? How do I look at our territories? How do I understand cloud propensity inside of territory to focus our resources? I think that's a key way to go from 5 to 20% of revenue, that people who are launching today are launching faster. The slope of the curve is steeper because they take a more intentional data-driven approach. So that would be.
And what do you see from the best? What do they do? Do they focus in on one territory, one industry? Do they start small and then get the flywheel established?
It depends on the ISV's maturity. We're seeing a lot of renewal motion focus where a couple, and I think the economics, Jay talked about this when the fees around marketplace changed to 3%, how that would change the way people thought about the economics.
Yeah,
and
that was a huge change.
I think that makes renewal, if you can save, like renewals are under pressure, everyone's budget's under pressure. And if you can say, hey, I can save a renewal by aligning it to the cloud budget, that's really powerful. So we see more focus on renewals than we saw in the past. It used to just all be about net new. And then I think sub-segmenting down your territories to where there's high cloud buyer intent. People used to say, I'm going to focus just on the Fortune 500 or, those that I know have mega EDPs. There's actually a lot of success in the mid-market. Right now, we're seeing transaction size come down, which implies the cloud budgets are moving down market, which means people are transacting both from a product-led way as well as a mid-market perspective. So I think
you brought up 2 points I'm gonna amplify with you on. One is that the renewals didn't always sit in the same bucket or wasn't as focused in from a cloud go-to-market perspective, right? It was new deals. It was net new.
Yeah. And
so usually it's a different team. It might be under the CRO, it might be in a different part of the organization. So just the fact that they're starting to do that now, that's a big leap. And then this mid-market. We had leaders from Microsoft at the event talking about this mid-market opportunity. Microsoft's finally getting deliberate. AWS was already there with cloud commitments, but Microsoft was later to the dance and getting, they have a $75 billion business in the mid and down market. And to your point there, there's huge opportunities for partners.
Yeah, I think huge. And for sellers, they can sell more, they can sell faster. For buyers, they can transact easier.
Yeah.
Streamline contracts. Like G&A teams are under pressure. People aren't hiring people in procurement and legal to process contracts. So if you can eliminate paperwork from a buyer standpoint, that's a benefit. So
many benefits here.
Yeah.
It's like why wouldn't I do this at this point, right?
Right.
But again, it's change, and change doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Well, it has been so great to have you here in person.
Yeah, great to be here in person.
Excited to have you and being at our event and now being here in the studio with us, John. So delightful to be partnering with you and with Tackle.
Yeah, always appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe on your favorite channel and go to our new YouTube channel and subscribe there as well. Thank you for joining and following and listening to The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. If you're part of the movement, you know I have a very strong point of view. I've sat on both sides of the table for over 30 years now. I built growth through partnerships in PC, internet, cloud, mobile, AI, marketplaces, and more. I've also seen the demise of organizations that are resistant to change. I'm part of the communities, special interest groups, and associations, and I don't see one place that mirrors the ecosystem and brings it all together. You see, I see a vibrant world where hyperscalers, builders, ISV sellers, SIs, MSPs, and other partners come together to spark the ecosystem's growth. I've talked to many of you, and what I continually hear is it's noisy, I don't know whom to listen to, and where to go. There's a massive opportunity, but I'm not sure how to get there. Well, you've been heard. We're getting ready to open the doors early to pilot this new experience. We want this to be your place with your feedback and participation. If you're a builder, an innovator, or a leader, visit our website